All right, let's start with this equation up at the top. P sub n is equal to A times P sub n minus 1 plus D. That's the shell model that we're going to be using for all kinds of different applications, at least for a month, maybe a little bit more. And not all things can be modeled with this. It's just a really nice model to start out with because it's easy to use. Now, in the case of Dr. Cottom's data, I knew what A and D were. A was 0.70, or he wanted it to be 0.70. 70% of the patients should return every time to the clinic. And the D was 0 because I didn't add anything to it. In the case of Towers Hanoi, the A was 2 and the D was 1. Here, we don't know what the A and D are, but I have data. This is actual data of something that happened. And now I want to generate what the A and the D were, because if I know the A and the D, I have a model. And so I want to calculate the A and the D. So how do I calculate that? Well, the easiest way to do that is the following. I'm going to take this DDS, this linear discrete dynamical system, and I'm going to replace this P sub n with a y and a P sub n minus 1 with an x, if it'll let me. Doesn't like it. Let me put this a times x back in. Well, it doesn't quite look like it, but that's the equation of a line with the a being m, the slope, and the d being the y-intercept. So really, if my y's were these values here, and my x's were P sub n minus 1, if you recall what we started out with, let me put this below here. So this is a line. Let me keep this A and D right now. So these two things are the same thing. P sub n is this data here, right? This is all the P sub n's. So these are my y's. And if I now put in here, let's see if I can copy and paste this. So if I put in P sub n minus 1 here, in this column, that's my x's. Well, P sub n is just the one before it. I made you do copy and paste in class, but if this is P sub 0, well, I could actually do it this way. There's nothing here because there's nothing before P sub 0. P sub 0 would go here because that's the old one. 323 would go here. See, if this is P sub 2, this is supposed to be P sub 1. I can do it this way. Doesn't seem to like it. Let's try it one more time. Okay, there it is. So whenever I have P sub 1, P sub 0 has got to be next to it. Whenever I've got P sub 2, P sub 1 has got to be next to it. And this is really P sub 3. So if I put an insert equation P sub 3, this is P sub 2 next to it. Now I could just keep going, right? This is 256. Not liking what I'm typing. 256. And this one is, did I get this wrong? Yeah, 256, 251, 277, 256, 165, I'd get the one right before it, 277, and then 205 would be 165, and then 198. So now I've got a column of x's and y's, and supposedly if I graph these two against each other, I'm going to get a scatter plot. And the equation of the line that's the best fit in the scatter plot is going to give me, the slope of that line is going to be the a, and the y-intercept of that line is going to be the d, because these are my x's and these are my y's. And this is a line, and a is the slope of that line. So it's not going to be, since it's real data, it's not going to really be a line. And it's not, but I can find the best fit line that goes through it, and that's the optimal way to find a and d. And that's why we did it all in one shot. There's no reason to set d equals to 0, because we have an optimal way to actually find a and d at the same time. And I hope that makes sense. And I did it a little bit differently in class, but I still did the same lineup. You can manually line them up. P0 has to be next to P1. P1 has to be next to P2. P2 has to be next to P3. And then once I do that, if I do it, I'll do it quickly over here. So if I do that, this is my P sub n. And P sub n, I can manually type this in. So nothing there because there's nothing before that, but I can manually type in, this is 251, this is 323, this is 309, this is 256, next one is 165, the next one is 205, next is 198. I think that's gone off the screen, but I'll put it on the screen in a second. So here, you can see it. There they are. That's the same thing I had in the Word file. Well, if I scatter plot these two, it doesn't look like a line, but I can find the best fit line, and that's what I just showed you on in class, is how to find that best fit line. And it turns out that the slope of that line is the a, and the y-intercept is the d. And so that's what we're doing. I hope this clarifies it a bit.